This is a download from London's LBC 97.3.
Oh, this is lovely. Oh, Ian in Sydenham, thank you so much. It's just come in by text on 0771 776 0973. It says, James, mate, I had to tell you this. Out of the mouths of babes. My 11-year-old son was moaning last night about Westlife being number one. So I said, but they're outselling Robbie Williams. He gets a confused look on his face and says, Dad, why would they want to go out selling Robbie Williams CDs? They're pop stars. I think that's absolutely priceless. As indeed was the look on his face when the penny dropped, says Ian in Sydenham. That is lovely. As if they're outselling Robbie Williams, son. They're, you know, that's why they're number one. Why would Westlife want to go out selling Robbie Williams CDs? Surely they've got enough money of their own. Anyway, maybe the moon was in a certain phase last night, which made young Jack behave a little oddly. Mel's on the M25. Is that a viable proposal, Mel? Can the moon affect our moods?
Well, it can certainly affect my son's.
Go on.
He's autistic, and we sort of have a bit of a standing joke in our house that when there's a new moon, we've just got to go out for the day and be busy because he's just much, much more hyperactive than normal.
With a new moon, not a full moon?
No, with a new moon.
Wow. And how does this hyperactivity manifest itself? Is he just bouncing off the walls?
Yeah, literally, yeah. And I used to work in a school with a class of autistic children around the age of between 5 and 7. And again, you know, when we plan the lessons around a new moon, we would, you know, we'd all sit there and look, what on earth got into these children today? Oh, must be a new moon.
Straight up?
Absolutely.
I've just missed the boat on this, haven't I? Well, you live and learn, Mel. That's what we're here for. Of course, Clive Ball would have a view on this. I know that I'm sure Clive has a theory about full moons as well. I just found it staggering when an outwardly respectable professional woman told me that she honestly believes the moon affects her moods. Looks like I might be the one who's got the slightly skewed worldview on this. Everyone else seems to think it's a no-brainer. This is LBC 97.3. Richard is in Weybridge. Morning, Richard.
Good morning, James.
What's your take on this?
This is absolutely true. I used to work in the money markets, and one of my brokers suffered from migraine. So once a month he had this stonking migraine. We started to plot currency markets, US futures, and the stock markets. And basically, plus or minus 24 hours around a full moon, any market you like takes a dip. Whether it's in a bull market or a bear market situation, it will take a dip. It happened to the FTSE a few weeks ago. It happened around about 9 out of 12 months, and we used to make a lot of money on it.
That is absolutely astonishing, isn't
and
it?
Also, because I suffer from migraines myself, autumn and spring solstice and a full moon is absolute nightmare because not only do you have the pressure of the moon, but you've got your air pressure changing as well.
Well, I never... How do you get your money on the markets if you've got such a bad migraine?
You tried to do it the day beforehand.
Oh, I
and
see.
you have people that work for you.
Yes, of course you do. That's what delegation's all about. Richard, blimey, so we go from a primary school classroom to the FTSE, to the London Stock Exchange, or the Financial Times Index, and we see an impact on both caused by the moon, allegedly. Keith, what else is there? Can't just be moons. I'm thinking about other odd things that we honestly believe affect our moods.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Keith.
Well, I was married, well, still vaguely married, to a Russian for 17 years, and they have all sorts of weird and wonderful beliefs. And one of the things she convinced me of eventually was that if she felt tired, it was because there were a lot of clouds about.
Hey?
Yeah, exactly. Then I started to think about this, and well, of course, air pressure lower when clouds are lower, possibly there's something in it. I don't know.
So what, we're getting less oxygen in our blood or something like that?
God knows. But anyway, you know, if I felt sluggish, she said, oh, it's because there's lots of clouds about. And eventually, of course, when there were clouds about, I felt sluggish. But that's maybe Pavlov.
Of course, yes, I know what you mean. It could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Don't ask her this if you don't want to, but there's a bit of confusion in the studio over what being vaguely married means.
Right. Well, probably means I still am. We've been separated for about 8 years, trying to get a shot of her and all that sort of stuff, and happily ensconced with. Well, at the great age of 50, I had my first child of ever with another partner.
Oh, mate, at 50, your first one. When was that?
Too many years ago, 6 years ago.
Okay. No, well, good luck with that. Good for you. That's lovely. I'm about to join that club myself, but I worry I might be talking about it a bit too much. I don't know if I'm getting on your nerves a bit, but hey, you'd have to be a bit of a misery guts not to give a fella a break when he's queuing up to become a dad. Robin is in Guildford. What else, Robin? We've got clouds. I'm already. It's only 10:25, and I'm converted on the idea of the moon affecting our moods.
Well,
I'll tell you some effects, and I'll also tell you why.
Oh, good man.
Right, effects. I trade the stock market full time.
Yeah.
Options and futures. Now, your previous caller said a dip. Well, I would say it's a reversal. What I often see with a moon change, full moon, is the market, if it's going up, it'll turn and come down. If it's going down, it'll turn and come up. And you can plot moon cycles with reversal points against not just the FTSE, but the S&P, the Dow. And it's not absolutely consistent. Otherwise, everybody would be making money all the time.
Of course.
But there's definitely correlation.
Well, I never.
But here's why.
Yeah.
Einstein said the most important force in the universe was gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about gravity. The moon moves billions of tons of water every day.
True.
We are 97% water.
Yeah.
Why should it not have an effect on us as well? If it can move billions of tons of water from one side of the Earth to the other every day, why should it not have an effect on us? And our brains...
It's a good question.
I like water, but that's why horoscopes work.
Hey, go on, hang on a minute. You're pushing the envelope now, mate.
Okay. Most important force in the universe is gravity. Horoscope is all about positions of the planets.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Gravity is all about mass.
Yeah, but I mean, I give you the science of what you're stating. To extrapolate from the fact that gravity is exercising its influence over the heavenly bodies to the fact that because I was born in March, I'm going to be a bit tight with money is surely a step too far.
No. It's nothing to do with when you're born.
Okay.
It's all to do with when you're conceived. Because what happens is, the horoscope's been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
In the olden days, people were a little bit more delicate and they didn't say, when did you make love to your wife and when were you conceived? But we just state for 9 months in what? Water. Water is much greater mass than air.
Okay, everything's coming back to wombs at the moment, Robin. Okay, clever clogs. Why do dock leaves relieve stinging nettles?
Now, come on now. Now, I'm a scientist. Now you're taking the mickey out of me. I'm about to tell you why horoscopes make sense. And it's all to do with the positions of the planets and the gravitational forces on us, as we just state.
London's LBC 97.3.
0870 90 90 973.
James O'Brien.
It's 26 minutes to 11. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC 97.3. And the reason why I've got the giggles is I was just having a chat with the producer about words that are and are not acceptable on the radio, and we've decided that the word beep beep is not acceptable, even though I thought it would have added to the hilarity of the day. I'll tell you what, maybe we'll put this on the podcast. There you go. I've got a very rude joke for you that I think you'll find very funny. But you can only get it on the podcast of this morning's programme. That's the deal. So you've got to get onto lbc.co.uk, download it, or from iTunes, subscribe to my podcast, and you get a half-hour daily dose of the best of the programme, or the least worst, depending on your perspective, the least bad bits of the programme, and the slightly rude discussion the producer and I were just having then during the adverts, you can hear in full on the download of our iPod, lbc.co.uk. It's 25 minutes to 11. We've got evidence from old people's homes, primary schools and city banks, stock markets, that the moon does affect the world. I'm going to take a couple more calls on that, but I'm interested in what other things you honestly believe affect moods. Teachers will be good at this, won't they? Because you see a group of people. What else affects our moods, our emotional well-being? Unexpected things that affect it. Oh, as well, I must tell you, on Monday morning at 11, that's the 7th of November, a lovely lady who I met the other day, and I thought I'd really like her to introduce her to you, the chief executive of Camelot. You know, the lottery people, Diane Thompson. And she is the absolute head honcho. You know, she is in charge. And she's a really interesting lady. And she is really keen just to answer all your questions about the lottery. So any questions you've got, anything at all. If she can't answer it, she's a straight-up Yorkshire girl. She'll tell you that she can't answer it. She won't give you any spin doctory nonsense or anything like that. She the only thing that I would urge you not to ask her, which I did after probably that extra glass of red that I shouldn't have had, is, excuse me, Diane, could you give me a heads up on what Saturday's numbers might be? As if she'd never heard that before. But that's going to be on Monday morning from 11. So if you've got any lottery-related issues that wind you up or that just baffle you and you're still a little bit confused, she will be able to deal with all of that. What else affects your moods? And
I phoned up the VAT man the other day. I've had all manner of problems with it, and it was a gentleman answered the phone who I think was Nigerian, and something awful happened. I didn't understand what he said the first sentence because I wasn't prepared for a strong accent, and I felt my heckles rising. I felt myself getting annoyed that the person at the end of the phone apparently didn't speak my language as well as I do, and then I sort of paused. Actually, I waited just a second, and I realised it was just a strong accent. He spoke English perfectly. Of course he did. He spoke just with a strong West African accent. He may not have been Nigerian, but you know that strong West African accent. And it struck me that this is probably quite symptomatic of how a lot of us react to apparently foreign people in positions of public power, whether it's nurses or doctors or people that are answering the phone in the tax call centre. I wonder whether we get a bit confused between the difference between a strong accent and poor English. If you've got a strong accent, then frankly that's fair enough. I mean, could you imagine getting served in a hospital or getting looked after in a hospital by someone with a really strong Welsh accent? As a Londoner, we would struggle to decipher it, or a really strong Geordie accent, or someone from Govan in Glasgow who literally talk as if they as if they can't move their teeth and that. It's all like this, Jimmy. So what's the difference between... That was very good, I thought. No? Was that not a good accent? So what's Cornish accent? What is the difference between a strong British regional accent speaking perfect English and a strong foreign accent speaking perfect English? To me, there's no difference at all. I mention it only because I think it's important to remind ourselves of that occasionally. However, and I hesitate to tell you this because it's in the Daily Mail, who, predictably enough, have got in a right old high dudgeon about this. There are apparently an increasing number of nurses in London who actually can't speak English. Have you met them? Or have you met people in other positions of responsibility or positions of service who actively can't speak English? Because if you have, then regardless of the fact that it might play into the hands of certain prejudices, I think we need to know, because this has been reported, and nurses not speaking English, that's a problem, isn't it? People in McDonald's not speaking English, not a problem, really, because, you can just point at it. But if a nurse makes a mistake because of a language barrier, it's not as easily rectified. Just tell me what you found. 0870 90 90 973. And I appreciate this will be difficult for you, but if you are still in the closet, I want to know what your job has to do with it. This is because the captain of the Stonewall football team, Stonewall, of course, one of the major gay pressure groups. I think the first, actually. The captain of the Stonewall football team says they're aware of Premiership football players. I mean, you know who the rumours are about. You don't need me to tell you. But they're aware of Premiership football players who are gay and are still too scared, is the only word I can use, or pressured or intimidated to come out of the closet. It can't just be football. Does your job affect your decision to come out of the closet? Or have your colleagues been surprisingly cool about it? So you beat yourself up about it. You delayed coming out because you were worried how your workmates would react. When you actually came out of the closet, you were delighted to find that they really couldn't give a monkeys about what you get up to in the privacy of your own bedroom. Or are you still in there because you're frightened of how they'll react? 0870 90 90 973. Miriam is in Deptford. We've got, what have we got? We've got clouds, Miriam. We've got the moon. What else affects moods?
Wind.
Pardon?
I don't mean the sort of wind from baked beans.
Oh, I was going to say, well, obviously wind affects your moods. You should see Mrs. O'Brien when I've had a dose.
No, years ago I used to teach in a secondary school.
Yeah.
And used to dread days like today.
Really?
High winds. The kids would be absolutely bananas.
What, indoors?
Yeah.
How
absolutely.
Bizarre. Any theories why?
No, just that it was windy. And the higher the wind, the madder they were.
That is remarkable,
Yeah.
isn't it? I wonder if again, it could all have to be doing with pressure.
Well, it could well be.
Clouds, wind, air pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of, oxygen pump, or the speed at which blood is pumped around your body makes you more hyperactive. I just don't know.
Be, but my mother-in-law insists that when there's going to be a storm, she has major headaches.
But she could, so she predicts storms.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a useful skill in a mother-in-law.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't it?
I think you're probably right.
Yes. Oh, well, I like that. It's on the list, Miriam. You have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Wind, moon, clouds. I like this. Sprouts? No. Not that sort of wind. It's 10:41. I remember I want to hear from you. Let's do more out of the mouths of babes as well, because Ian, we weren't going to do this today, but Ian's been in touch, if you're just joining us, with his lad last night. Was really annoyed that Westlife had gone to number one. And so he said, Dad, it's not right. Why have Westlife gone to number one? So Dad said, well, son, they're outselling Robbie Williams CDs. So, they're bound to go to number one. And the little lad, Jack, he goes, well, why are they going outselling Robbie Williams CDs? Surely they've got enough money. We've had another one in already from Jude, who says, years ago, my friend you'd think Jude was a bit busy at the moment, what with his love life being in such uproar, but he's found the time to text us on 0771 776 0973. Years ago, my friend took his son to McDonald's. He didn't like the taste. This is the dad didn't like the taste, so he said it must be the gherkin, and his son said, well, you can take the gherk out. That's nice. Can we do this, or is it going to be a bit soppy? I love it when children are discovering language, aren't they? They're flexing their verbal muscles. They're trying to use words in certain ways, and God forbid we don't encourage them enough to do that. I mean, it is a wonderful thing, language, and I love the notion of it being a relatively new weapon, a relatively new tool in the hands of a child, and it will almost necessarily, it will, in some way, how can you put this? There will be mistakes. It will backfire. The new weapon of vocabulary will backfire occasionally when you're young. So tell us about the kids. Out of the mouths of babes is what we call it. Let's. What are your examples of that? It's got to be funny, or really, absolutely knee-crossingly sweet and twee. 0870 90 90973. Gareth is in Reigate. Morning, Gareth.
Yes, morning to you, James.
What have you got for us?
You just caught me there with a sort of a raw sort of topic there.
This is the nurses not speaking English.
Nurses not speaking English in hospitals.
What's your experience, Gareth?
Well, first of all, first-time caller, so...
You're very welcome.
About 2 years, so...
oh, top man, I appreciate it.
Plucked up the courage.
Thank you.
But as I said, it really boils around the fact that my mother had a stroke back in March, and the simple fact that while she was in there for 2.5 months, predominantly in Charing Cross Hospital, they are foreign nurses, and it was getting very annoying because I was at the hospital, during the evenings, and nurses were, there who couldn't speak English.
Now, are we sure that they couldn't speak English? It wasn't just strong accents.
English, but they would speak in their own language at the bottom of the bed.
What, to each other?
To each other.
Oh, that's not fair.
When my mother was lying there, she needed help, but because she was there and she was a problem, and she couldn't sort of speak for herself, and she had lost her speech.
Yes.
They just stood at the bottom of the bed and spoke in their own language. It was appalling.
And she found that, both alienating and presumably slightly intimidating.
Well, absolutely, and they did this while I was sitting there.
Yeah, and you can understand why. I mean, if you and I were in France in a hospital, we'd talk to each other in English. We wouldn't try and speak in French. But if we were health professionals, you wonder whether someone should have said to us, while you're on duty, you can only speak English. Does that make me sound like a Nazi?
Absolutely not. And although I did feel that I was being prejudiced, but
yes.
At the end of the day, all I wanted to do was to point out to these people that you need to obviously...
Or more than that, Gareth, more than that, mate. What you wanted to do was maximise your mother's comfort.
Absolutely.
That's all you wanted to do.
At the end of the day, my mother was in a bed. She just felt she was insecure.
And lonely, more lonely than she needed to feel. That's a really good a bit of evidence, Gareth, and I'm so glad you plucked up the courage to become a first-time caller, because that has, in a sense, crystallised my own thoughts towards this notion that if nurses are on duty, then they have to speak English, surely. Otherwise, like Gareth's mum, the patients are going to feel a bit left out, and that's the last thing you want in hospital.
Thank you for listening to this download from London's LBC 97.3.